Good evening, you're listening to The Truth Tank and I'm your host, The Tank. If this is your first time listening to The Truth Tank, a big welcome. If you're a repeat listener, welcome back. This is part 2 of the New Orleans New Year's Eve terrorist attack. On part 2, we'll be looking at the mysterious and very weird case surrounding the man that blew himself up in a Cybertruck outside of a Trump hotel in Las Vegas on New Year's Eve. So just before we get into it, if you'd like to support the show, head on over to the Facebook and Instagram page, give them a follow and a like. Download your favourite episodes on your preferred podcast platform. You can rate and review the show. Each rating and review helps the show grow and get found, and would be greatly appreciated by yours truly. Still working on the merch store. It should be coming up pretty soon. I've been trying to pump out as many episodes as I can. This will be the 4th episode in a week or just under a month, which I'm pretty proud of. I've never had multiple episodes this close together. It's usually like one a month or one every 5 to 6 weeks if it's a really big episode. So 4 episodes in a month is pretty damn good. I have to pat myself on the back. I'm trying to pump out as many as I can before Live Communism comes out on the 25th of March 2025. Circle it in your calendars. The live begins March 2025. Got a lot of episodes recorded and I'm trying to make my way through them all. Got a busy couple of weeks ahead of me and months and pretty much all year. But definitely stay tuned. There's a lot more Truth Tank content coming. Enough about that. So without further ado, let's get into tonight's show. This is episode 67 of the Truth Tank. The New Year's Eve terrorist attacks, part 2. The Cybertruck explosion outside of Trump Hotel.
G'day. Don't skip. Let me interrupt the podcast that you're currently listening to with some blatant self-promotion. What do you get when you mix 2 Aussie mates, a splash of booze, well, more than a splash, and some microphones? You get Cheers Big Ears, hosted by myself, the Chad, and my mate, Matt, and sometimes, but more often than not now, my missus, Bobby. It's a podcast of adult beverages and not-so-adult conversation. It's not serious, far from it. Well, except for that one episode, but that was just that one. We're available wherever you get your podcast fix. Cheers, Big Ears.
It's time to move on and have a look at a even weirder case, the Las Vegas Cybertruck attack. I think this case might be more interesting, but it's just as concerning as the New Orleans attack. It's a lot weirder in many regards. No one was killed this time around, and it doesn't look like terrorism was the intended point of the explosion. However, it is still very fucking weird and doesn't make any sense. Just like most things that happened in 2024, there is a deeper, much more confusing, conspiratorial and contradictory angle to it. There's already a lot of complexity surrounding the Cybertruck explosion, so who knows what is true and what is not, and what will be covered up, or even what will be covered and released to the media. Because here, these 2 stories have already been taken out of the news cycle. The LA fires have taken much of the media attention, so who knows if we'll ever see any type of conclusion to either of these events. And in light of what's happening in Los Angeles, a Cybertruck exploding outside of a hotel doesn't seem all that important. But nevertheless, let's have a look at it. So there's already a lot of complexity surrounding the Cybertruck explosion. Who knows what is true and what is not, what will be covered up. Much like the attempted assassination of Trump, the New Jersey drones, which is a really weird fucking story, the Boeing whistleblower deaths, the UAP phenomenon and the governmental inquest into the Tic Tac sightings, or any of the other weird shit that has happened in 2024. I guess the information-consuming public, will never know the full or truthful story behind it. Now, I thought this was going to be a straightforward story. I thought that's just a guy in a Cybertruck who blew himself up on New Year's Eve. It's a weird story for sure, but it seemed like it was a little more straightforward than the New Orleans case. That was until I listened to another Sean Ryan episode 155 with Sam Shoemate. Mr. Shoemate claims he was contacted by the guy that blew himself up a day or a couple of days before the December 31st attack, explosion. First reports claim that this guy was a former Army Green Beret, but as Mr. Shoemate explained on the show, apparently he was a active Green Beret. He had a lot of interesting things to say about anti-gravitational technology that apparently the government has that's tied to the drones over New Jersey. And there's some weirder stuff going on than the public is privy to, and it could prevent World War III. There's a lot to take in. I had to listen to the episode twice. He also explained that the reason for the attack was to draw attention to 2019 war crimes committed by the United States in Afghanistan. If you don't know what I'm talking about, listen to the show, episode 155. It was eye-opening to say the least. There's a lot of conspiratorial stuff around this guy, so who knows what to believe. So let's have a deeper dive into the Cybertruck explosion and try to find out who this guy was. As Mr. Shoemate explains, he doesn't think that he died during the attack. He thinks he might still be alive. Probably the most interesting and concerning part of both cases is they both happened pretty much on the same day. Both vehicles were rented using the same app. Both involved trucks, explosives, and guns, and former military personnel. Is the military angle? Did it just happen that they both happen to be in the army? The Las Vegas guy seems to be a different thing altogether. Before I get too ahead of myself, let's just dive straight into an article and get some facts. This is from pbs.org. Soldier who died in Cybertruck explosion left note saying it was a, quote, wake-up call for country's ills. Published January the 3rd by Tara Kopp, Associated Press, Alana Duncan-Richer, Associated Press, and Colleen Long. Highly decorated army soldier who died in an explosion of a Tesla Cybertruck at the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas left a note saying it was a stunt to serve, quote, as a wake-up call for the country's ills, investigators said Friday. And once again, who the fuck knows what to believe anymore? Who knows if any of this is true? If some of it is true and it's just a story that's being planted or seeded with a couple of facts sprinkled in to make it look and seem really legit. Is there something more to this story? Who the fuck knows? I'll leave that up to you to decide, because it's giving me a headache trying to figure all this shit out. Matthew Livelsberger, a 37-year-old Green Beret from Colorado Springs, Colorado, also wrote in the note that he needed to, quote, cleanse my mind of the lives lost of people he knew and the burden of the lives I took. Livelsberger apparently harbored no ill will toward President-elect Donald Trump, the county sheriff official said. Quote, although the incident is more public and more sensational than usual, it ultimately appears to be a tragic case of suicide involving a heavily decorated combat vet who was struggling with PTSD and other issues, FBI Special Agent in charge Spencer Evans said at a news conference. Is it a case where the simplest and most logical explanation is the correct one, or is there something being hidden in all of this? I think it's a bit... Look, because no one believes the government or the media anymore because they've just lied too many times. So even if this is true, I don't think anyone will really believe it. And I think it's very convenient. You're just going to blame this on PTSD and quote other issues. Yeah, there's a hell of a lot of things happening in this case, but I don't think it's a straightforward suicide. I think there's a lot more behind it. The explosion caused minor injuries to 7 people, but virtually no damage to the hotel. Quote, this was not a terrorist attack. It was a wake-up call. Americans only pay attention to spectacles and violence. What better way to get my point across than a stunt with fireworks and explosives, Livelsberger wrote in a letter found by authorities who released only excerpts of it, which, once again, doesn't really do a lot to build trust or credibility in investigations. And it's funny they managed to find a letter, but apparently this guy's body was so badly burnt, it had to be ID'd by dental records. So, how does a piece of paper or an iPhone survive a huge explosion with fireworks? I did think the fireworks was a little odd if he did want to blow himself up. I mean, couldn't he have found a lot more explosive things than fireworks? But I guess the point wasn't it was a stunt designed to garner attention. Investigators identified the Tesla driver, who was burned beyond recognition as Livelsberger by a tattoo and by comparing DNA from relatives. So if he was burnt beyond recognition, how the fuck did a tattoo manage to come out unscathed and in such good condition, without a shadow of a doubt, it could be tied back to Livelsberger. That seems a bit sus to me, but stranger things have happened. The cause of death was a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head, according to coroner's officials. Pentagon officials have declined to say whether Livelsberger may have been suffering from mental health issues, but say they have turned over his medical records to police. The new details came as investigations sought to determine Livelsberger's motive, including whether he sought to make a political point with the Tesla and the hotel bearing the president-elect's name. That's what I first thought when I saw this story. I thought this is just some nut job who doesn't like Trump and Elon and wants to make a big spectacle, or it's some type of political protest, whether he intended to take his own life or not, or whether he just accidentally blew himself up. It was kind of a obvious choice of location for a political stunt, but then the more you look into it, the more things don't add up. And if what Mr. Shoemate was saying on the Sean Ryan show is true, there is a much deeper, much darker conspiratorial angle to this story. Yeah, and look, this is not a gripe against the police department either. They're just doing their best to put this together, and I guess what it looks like to them looks different from the outside looking in. They have access to the information, obviously, but yeah, they're probably following the logical path to conclusion. But this seems like a very weird event, stunt, whatever you want to call it. I don't know what to make of it, to be honest. Is there a more conspiratorial angle to it, or is he just a veteran with PTSD trying to get his point across? I don't think we'll ever know. And going back to what I was saying about there's no such thing as coincidence, maybe these two events happen on the same night. Maybe that is the coincidental part. Maybe these two guys had their own agendas to follow. Do I think they're related? Absolutely not. I don't think there's any relation to Livelsberger and Jabbar. I think it's that part is the coincidence. Interesting, whenever anything like this happens, the perpetrator usually takes their own life by shooting themselves in the head. There's always a note that's found or an ID, and the body is always disfigured or burned beyond recognition. I think that's very convenient, and that's been seen in a lot of cases similar to this. The bodies just can't be ID'd. How do you know it's Livelsberger's body in the car? Unfortunately, I don't think we'll ever know. If it isn't Livelsberger, who is it then? And why are they sitting in the front seat of the car? Tesla CEO Elon Musk has recently become a member of President-elect Donald Trump's inner circle. Neither Trump or Musk was in Las Vegas early Wednesday, the day of the explosion. Both had attended Trump's New Year's Eve party at his South Florida estate. Musk spent an estimated $250 million during the presidential campaign to support Trump, who has named Musk the world's richest man, to co-lead a new effort to find ways to cut government's size and spending. Yeah, that's not that bad of an idea. Every government should have a department for governmental spending. Investigators suspect Livelsberger may have been planning a more damaging attack, but the steel-sided vehicle absorbed much of the force from the crudely built explosive. I guess it does say a lot for the Cybertruck. I've seen the pictures. The roof's blown off, obviously, but the sides and the back look relatively intact. I don't even think the tyres melted or popped. It's supposed to be a bulletproof car, and it looks like it's done a pretty good job. Yeah, maybe that's why he picked a Cybertruck, was he didn't want to cause unnecessary damage or injury. Just from the evidence that we've gone over, I don't think destruction was the preferred outcome in all this. Investigators said previously that Livelsberger shot himself in the head inside the Tesla Cybertruck packed with fireworks just before it exploded outside Trump International Hotel in Vegas on New Year's Day. Quote, "It's not lost on us that it's in front of the Trump building, that it's a Tesla vehicle, but we don't have information at this point that definitively tells us or suggests it was because of this particular ideology," Spencer Evans, the Las Vegas FBI special agent in charge, said Thursday at a conference. Asked Friday about whether Livelsberger had been struggling with any mental health issues that may have prompted his suicide, Pentagon spokeswoman Sabrina Singh told reporters that, quote, The department has turned over all medical records to local law enforcement. I'm sure we'll never hear the results of them. A law enforcement official said investigators learned through interviews that he may have gotten into a fight with his wife about relationship issues shortly before he rented the Tesla on Saturday and brought the guns. The official spoke on the condition of anonymity because they were not authorised to discuss the ongoing investigation. Authorities are still working to determine a motive. Among the charred items found inside the truck were a handgun at Livelsberger's feet. Apparently it was a Desert Eagle, which, as Sean Ryan points out, that if he was to go down that path, that would be the gun to use because you're basically going to get one chance of that. It's the biggest, most powerful handgun in the world. The chances of you fucking it up are pretty slim. Handgun at Livelsberger's feet. Another firearm, fireworks, a passport, military ID, credit cards, an iPhone and a smartwatch, Mick Hill said. Authorities said both guns were purchased legally. So, if the body was burnt beyond recognition, how did the ID, the phone, the smartwatch and the credit cards and the passport all manage to survive? The guts of the car were blown out. He's charred beyond recognition. How did all this stuff that's made out of plastic and that melts easy survive? I always think it's really convenient that passports and ID always seem to survive explosions. They're just, whenever you see them on the media, it's always like burned around the edges, like someone did it as a prop for a movie. Someone just got like a lighter and singed the edges to make it look like it was burnt. The picture, address, date of birth and name are all perfectly visible, which I find really fucking sus. How did a credit card not melt with that type of heat? I saw pictures of the guns. One of the guns was completely melted, and that's like hardened like polymer, plastic composite shit. That would have to melt at a pretty high temperature, I'd imagine. So how does something as flimsy as a credit card, a passport or a military ID survive that type of intense explosion that blew the roof of a bulletproof car off? And if it was so bad it charred his body beyond recognition, how was a tattoo left intact? The guns at his feet were burnt, so you can assume that the ID and credit card and phone and watch were in the seat next to him. And according to Mr. Shoemate, he thinks that Mr. Livelsberger was being tracked and he knew it. So why would he have a smartwatch and a smartphone? Two items that are very easy to track and trace. If this guy was trying to get this story out there about war crimes committed in 2019, and he was trying to get in contact with all the big podcasters and news agencies, and he wanted to get that story out so badly, why would he compromise his own safety by having smartwatches and a smartphone? Mr. Shoemate said that he knew he was being tracked. He didn't think it was too serious, but he knew he was being watched by some agency. And this is an ex-Green Beret guy. He would have been careful. He would have known the tricks of the trade, so it seems like that's a very careless move on his part. Livelsberger served in the Green Berets, highly trained special forces who work to counter terrorism abroad and train partners. He had served in the Army since 2006, rising through the ranks with a long career of overseas assignments, deploying twice to Afghanistan and serving in Ukraine, Tajikistan, Georgia and Congo, the Army said. He had recently returned from overseas assignment in Germany and was on approved leave when he died, according to US officials. The plot definitely thickens on that one. All those places in the world have had current conflicts, political upheaval, government change. Georgia just recently has had a whole bunch of protests against the government because the Russians want to install another puppet government and the people don't want it. Tajikistan, I don't know too much about. Ukraine, obvious, the war. Congo, same thing. That's had conflict going on for the past couple of years that doesn't really seem to get any airplay in Western media. So some interesting places. It's starting to look like this guy was trying to get a message out. I don't think this is a simple PTSD, mental health issues case either. I think he definitely was trying to get a message out and a point across. Now, did he have some type of involvement in all of these conflicts? I guess we'll never know. He was awarded a total of 5 Bronze Stars, including one with a Valor Device for Courage Under Fire, a Combat Infantry Badge, and an Army Commendation Medal with Valor. Okay, so this dude is like a legitimate hero. He doesn't seem like the type that offs himself in a Cybertruck outside of a hotel for PTSD. I'm starting to get a different take on Mr. Livelsberger. Authorities searched a townhouse in Livelsberger's hometown Thursday as part of an investigation. Neighbours said the man who lived there had a wife and a baby. Cindy Helwig, who lives diagonally across a narrow street separating the homes, said she last saw the man she knew as Matthew about 2 weeks ago, and when he asked her if he could borrow a tool he needed to fix an SUV he was working on. Quote, he was a normal guy, said Helwig, who said she last saw his wife and baby earlier this week. Yeah, once again, another seemingly normal guy that does something like this. You know, who knows what to believe? Nothing is straightforward in any story anymore. The explosion of the truck, packed with firework, mortars, and camp fuel canisters, came hours after 42-year-old Samsud-Din Jabbar rammed a truck into a crowd in New Orleans, famed French Quarter, early on New Year's Day, killing 14. FBI Deputy Assistant Director Chris Rea said Thursday that the officials have found no definitive link between the New Orleans attack and the Cybertruck explosion in Vegas. Interesting. But not surprising, I don't think the two are related. When I first heard about Mr. Livelsberger, I thought this was a simple case of a Manchurian Candidate scenario where someone had been brainwashed by the government to carry out some type of political statement or attack to derail the upcoming Trump inauguration. But it looks like it is much more conspiratorial than that, and a hell of a lot weirder and more complex than anyone could have guessed. This is another article from 9news.com.au by CNN, published January 5th, 2025, titled Driver Who Exploited Cybertruck in Las Vegas Rallied About Political Grievances and Domestic Issues Before Suicide. A Bronze Star recipient who exploded the Cybertruck outside the Trump International Hotel in Vegas wrote of political grievances, armed conflicts elsewhere, and domestic issues in the days leading up to his suicide, officials said on Friday. The writings were found in the cell phone of Matthew Allen Livelsberger, the truck's driver, said Sheriff Dory Corrin of the Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. Yeah, once again, how does a fucking iPhone survive that? I'm looking at the picture right now. It doesn't blow the roof off like I first thought, but the interior of the car is up in flames and it looks like it's a pretty intense fire. So how does plastic survive that close proximity with flame? The car's still working, one of the headlights is still on, and the tyres haven't burst. iPhones are tough, but if I dropped it into a fire, I'd expect it to be destroyed. But it seems to be a perfectly functioning iPhone that's found in a car after an explosion. In one letter, the driver of the Cybertruck said the incident was intended not as, quote, a terrorist attack, but rather a wake-up call, according to police. He wrote in the letter recovered by investigators that Americans only pay attention to spectacles and violence and fireworks and explosions, yada yada yada. The letter, containing more than 400 words, Livelsberger wrote that he needed to, quote, cleanse his mind of the brothers I've lost and relieve himself of the burden of the lives I took. He said the US was, quote, terminally ill and headed towards collapse. He also expressed support for President-elect Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and Robert F. Kennedy. Interesting. So I'm looking at a picture of the ID, and it's his military ID. You can make out his name. It doesn't look that damaged for an explosion. There's a picture of him where you can see all of his face. It kind of looks like someone's put like a cigarette or a hot piece of metal on the middle of it and melted it. It said affiliation, uniform service, agency department, Army, expires 2029, July. In a second, shorter letter that investigators released on Friday, the writer called for action to remove Democrats from both the federal government and the military. The letter, investigators believe, was written by Livelsberger and had fewer than 125 words. Included the possibility of occupying roads and federal buildings, not ruling out the use of force. Interesting. The Cybertruck was detonated outside a Trump International Hotel. We know that. Livelsberger, 37, of Colorado, died in the incident, and 7 others were injured. The Vegas incident occurred on the same morning as the deadly attacks. Yep. Both incidents are active ongoing investigations, with President Joe Biden receiving regular updates on them, the White House said on Friday. Evans said other family issues or personal grievances in his own life may have been a contributing factor in the man's actions in Las Vegas. It's evident that the subject considered, planned, and thoughtfully prepared for this act alone, he added. Investigators said they were still poring over, quote, a lot of content related to the case, including 2 cell phones and other evidence. Yeah, interesting. I wonder what that other evidence is. An active duty US Army Green Beret, Livelsberger was on leave from his base in Germany at the time of the blast. Sources told CNN the explosion was caused by... we already know that. In a 10-day journal of activity or surveillance log kept on one of his phones from December 21st to December 31st, investigators said Livelsberger chronicled his purchases of firearms, camping equipment, and other items. A family member and former Army colleague described Livelsberger as a highly decorated combat veteran who loved his country as well as Trump. Quote, when President Trump was in office, Livelsberger would comment on his Facebook page about the things President Trump had said or done or how he was helping the military. A family member who asked not to be named told CNN, quote, Matt had a lot of respect for Mr. Trump. He just loved the guy. I think I'm actually more confused now than before when I had the idea of this guy being a Manchurian candidate in my mind. I don't know what to fucking think anymore. It's like everything these days, you have no fucking idea who's right, who's wrong, if the media's telling the truth. Who fucking knows? For a guy who, is a Green Beret, knows a lot about security, it doesn't seem like he had a password on his phone, or if he did, the police seem to have gotten into it pretty easily. And going back to Sean Ryan and Mr. Shoemate, he claimed he was contacted by him by an encrypted email service, and he took a lot of precautions to cover his tracks and to stay very secure online, so it seems unlikely. I do believe Mr. Shoemate. I don't think he has any reason to lie, especially lie publicly. They both seemed pretty blown away by some of the information that was presented on that episode. If this guy has taken all these steps to cover his tracks while trying to contact news outlets and podcasters and get his story across, it seems very unlikely he would not have an encrypted phone or at the very least a password on his phone. And police have just recovered these letters from the phone that quickly. It doesn't seem like this guy would be that lax with security, but at the same time, he wants to get his point across, so yeah, maybe he left the phone deliberately unlocked so the letters can be read. But then there's also the heat in the fire, and how did he know the phone wasn't going to be destroyed in the explosion? That's the big thing, I guess, is you don't know. If the phone was destroyed in the explosion, then the letters would be absolutely useless, and then he wouldn't have gotten his point across. So it seems like the New Orleans attack, a lot of planning has gone into this. So another article from Forbes.com, man who died in Cybertruck explosion identified as Green Beret and Bronze Star recipient. Here's what we know about him. It's by Ty Rush. 8th of January 2025. Matthew Livelsberger, an active duty Green Beret, died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head before a Tesla Cybertruck exploded outside Trump International Hotel in Vegas. New Year's Day, according to police, as law and order enforcement probe the incident as possible terrorist act. And this is when the police were very quick to label it as a terrorist attack. Yes, I guess something explodes. It looks like it's deliberate. Terrorism is what investigators go to now. But in the weeks since that happened, terrorism has pretty much been ruled out, I think. The coroner of Clark County, Nevada, identified Livelsberger, 37, as the driver of the Cybertruck who died by suicide before the blast, according to Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. Livelsberger's phone was recovered from the explosion's aftermath and contained notes saying the US was headed towards collapse. We've seen that before. Notes also said This was not an act of terrorism and was instead a wake-up call, adding Americans only need to pay attention to spectacles of violence. Vegas Sheriff Kevin McMahul said in a press conference multiple IDs belonging to Livelsberger, including passport ID, were found in the Cybertruck, though law enforcement could not initially confirm whether Livelsberger was the driver because the body found in the wreckage was, quote, burnt beyond recognition. I've already mentioned why I think that is a bit sus. Livelsberger was a member of the Army's Green Beret Special Forces unit, served at Fort Bragg, was deployed twice to Afghanistan, and was on leave from Germany at the time of the explosion. Livelsberger reportedly awarded 5 Bronze Stars during his service, which we saw before. Livelsberger and Jabbar rented their vehicles through Turo, a vehicle sharing app, though the company said in a statement neither had a criminal background that Turo believes would have flagged them as a security risk. Okay, so there are some security protocols for vehicle hire if you're a criminal, but then again you have to be a criminal, and a lot of people who do commit terrorist attacks don't have any prior criminal record or history. It seems very random and they come out of nowhere. Not a good day for the CEO of Turo. It's not very good publicity for them. 2 attacks happen on New Year's involving vehicles hired by Turo. Not to mention the vehicles they would have had to have leased or brought in order to rent them. One being a Cybertruck, which is not fucking cheap. The FBI said the agency's office in Denver and the Colorado Springs Police Department were conducting law enforcement activity at a Colorado Springs home related to the explosion. Though the agency did not include additional details, investigators also found a second phone in the Cybertruck, though McMahill said they had been unable to access it. Okay, yeah. Maybe he did have a password on it. So maybe he was intending for the letters to be found on a burner phone or something. What else do we know about Livelsberger? Livelsberger lived with his wife and daughter in Colorado Springs, according to the Denver Gazette. Alicia Ariett, Livelsberger's ex-girlfriend, told the outlet, Livelsberger's attitude and behaviour appeared to shift in 2019 after he returned home from deployment with a traumatic brain injury. He became isolated and showed depressive symptoms, which Ariett said went under-treated because it's not acceptable to seek treatment when someone is in special forces. Spencer Evans, the special agent in charge of the FBI's Las Vegas field office, said investigators determined Livelsberger's likely had post-traumatic stress disorder. Livelsberger sent text messages to Ariett in the days before the blast, telling Ariett he left his home on December 26th. After an argument with his wife, he sent photos of his rented Cybertruck to Ariett, telling her on December 29th, quote, I feel like Batman or Halo. None of the messages sent by Livelsberger before New Year's Day suggest he would carry out the explosion, Ariett told the Gazette. Interesting. So, yeah, is it a case that this comes down to post-traumatic stress or just general stress and transitional issues from the military back to civilian life? Both guys come home. He apparently has this traumatic brain injury. I think there's something more to it than that. It seems a bit random. I would have thought that seeking treatment was a lot more acceptable now, but I'm not a Special Forces Green Beret, so can't really comment. Seems a bit weird that in both cases these guys come home from the military and they have these issues back in civilian life. Where did Matthew Livelsberger travel from? Livelsberger picked up the rented Cybertruck in Denver on the 29th of December before driving south. According to McMahill, he charged the truck on December 30th in Momentum, Colorado, before charging it multiple times on New Year's Eve, including stops in Trinidad, Colorado, and Las Vegas, New Mexico, where he began traveling west. He stopped 2 more times that day in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Gallup, New Mexico. On New Year's Day, Livelsberger charged the Cybertruck in Holbrook and Flagstaff, Arizona, before arriving in Vegas. Shortly at about 5:33 a.m. local time. What was found inside the Cybertruck? A pistol, semi-automatic rifle were found inside the vehicle, and law enforcement determined both were lawfully purchased by Livelsberger, according to Kenneth Cooper, the Assistant Special Agent in charge of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives office in San Francisco. The handgun was found at the feet of the person inside the truck. Aerial shells Firework mortars, camp fuel canisters, and fuel enhancers were also found. What caused the Cybertruck to explode? Officials said on January 7th the explosion was caused by fireworks, gas tanks, and camping fuel that Livelsberger detonated using a device. Yeah, okay, interesting. A car bomb or an improvised explosive device was used to explode the Cybertruck. Assistant Sheriff Dorian Corrin said, citing footage confirming Livelsberger, quote, did prepare and stage for this planned attack. How did Livelsberger plan the explosion? Yeah, interesting, that's the first time I've heard an IED mentioned. If anyone would know how to make one, it would be a Green Beret. It's funny, the other articles and reports haven't mentioned that. How did Livelsberger plan the explosion? Livelsberger used ChatGPT to help plan the explosion, okay. Which included queries on putting together an explosive. Yeah, interesting. Very interesting. How fast the round would need to be fired for the explosive to ignite, and what laws he would need to circumvent to acquire materials to create the explosive, Mick Mahill said Tuesday. It's not immediately clear what answers Livelsberger received when asking the chatbot. ChatGPT's developer, OpenAI, told CNN the company is quote-unquote saddened by this incident and committed to seeing AI tools used responsibly. Yeah, well, maybe put some protocols in place before you unleash a open source AI onto the world. OpenAI did not immediately respond for a request for comment by Forbes. Yeah, I can't imagine why. Was the explosion linked to the New Orleans attack? The FBI found no definitive link between the Cybertruck explosion and the New Orleans attack, as investigators into the incidents are in the early stages. Churro noted it was not aware of any information that would indicate the two incidents are related. There is no indication the explosives has connections to ISIS, like the New Orleans attack, where the FBI said the ISIS flag was found. What do we know about Matthew Livelsberger's motive? Mick Mahill, God, that name is annoying to say, said shortly before the blast the incident was under investigation as a possible terrorist attack, adding he was, quote, comfortable calling the incident a suicide, with a bombing that occurred immediately thereafter. Corrin said police found a 6-page manifesto on Livelsberg's cell phone that details political and social and cultural issues, and to include criticism of the current administration, in addition to domestic issues in the days leading up to the blast. Livelsberger also wrote that he was high and had been drinking, though investigators are working to confirm this. Corrin noted Evans said, it's not lost on us the incident took place in front of the Trump Hotel and involved a vehicle developed by Tesla, whose CEO Elon Musk has become increasingly close to Trump, yada yada yada. After the notes from Livelsberger's phone were discovered, Evans suggested there were potential, quote, family issues or personal grievances in his own life that may have been contributing factors, just like Mr. Jabbar. To the incident, a conspiracy theory shared by billionaire Bill Ackman claimed Livelsberger was framed for the explosion and had been shot by someone else, and the Cybertruck's autopilot feature was then used to navigate the vehicle to the hotel. Yeah, okay, interesting. I did think maybe foul play was afoot, but I heard Elon Musk comment on that theory, which we're about to hear from. Musk shut down the theory, however, saying the autopilot feature would not function unless it detects a, quote, active person in the front seat. Interesting. One of Livelsberger's relatives appeared to suggest to CNN the blast was not politically motivated despite the incident taking place outside of President-elect Donald Trump's hotel. Livelsberger had previously written social media posts supporting Trump. One of Livelsberger's military colleagues told CNN they were surprised about the incident, saying Livelsberger's unit was often tasked with clearing improvised explosive devices. Yeah, okay, the plot thickens. The colleague also suggested Livelsberger never indicated he was struggling during their deployment to Afghanistan or after they returned home, and that Livelsberger would have had, quote, his pick of options for career field when Livelsberger gets out of the military. Interesting. I don't think these are the type of guys that would admit they need help or are struggling. Interesting if his unit was the one that was searching for IEDs. What has Elon said about the Cybertruck explosion? Musk said the company had confirmed the explosion was caused by, quote, very large fireworks or an explosive in the Cybertruck's bed, later saying law enforcement believes the explosion was most likely intentional. Musk, echoing a statement from Mick Mahill, suggested the Cybertruck had contained the explosion and directed the blast upwards, preventing additional damage to the hotel. He added the incident was likely an act of terrorism, noting both the Cybertruck and truck used in the New Orleans attack were rented by Chiro. Key background: a Tesla Cybertruck parked outside the Trump International Hotel exploded about 8:40 a.m. local time on New Year's Day, killing at least one person and injuring another 7 people. Mick Mahill said the truck appeared to contain gasoline, canned fuel canisters and large firework mortars, though it was not immediately clear how the truck was ignited earlier in the morning, a rented Ford pickup. Yada yada yada, end of article. The one lingering question I would have in all this, and this is a very confusing and very complicated case that I don't think is black and white at all, the one question I still have is Mr. Livelsberger dead? If he's not, who was in the driver's seat? How did the body get there? How did they top themselves? It's 100% likely that it is Mr. Livelsberger as well, but yeah, I'm not so sure that it is. And if Mr. Shoemate on the Sean Ryan show also doesn't think that he's dead, he thinks that he's alive. So who is in the driver's seat? And like all these cases, the body's always burnt beyond recognition. No surprises given an explosion occurred, but I think it's all too convenient that all the ID and phones all survive. So in the end, I guess let the conspiracy theories begin. It's also a self-driving car, which Elon has shut down, and he's the guy that invented it, so he should know. Yeah, body burnt beyond recognition. It's just too common in these type of cases. It also seems like an autopsy was done on Mr. Livelsberger pretty rapidly. And going back a couple of months to the Trump shooter, after he was killed, his body pretty much disappears. He was allegedly cremated days after the event. Don't think there was even an autopsy done, or if there was, it wasn't made available to the public. It's very convenient that in this case, the perpetrator with a big secret who wants to draw attention to his cause is killed in this explosion. The body is burnt beyond recognition, but his military ID, his credit cards, his license and phone are all key pieces of evidence that survives that determines his identity, as well as the tattoo that didn't seem to be burnt beyond recognition. So where was this tattoo? It seems a bit too convenient. And I got one final article from newsnation.com. I'm not sure how legit it is. It's titled "Why Conspiracy Theories Exist Over Las Vegas Explosion" by Jeff Arnold. 3rd of January 2025. Let's have a quick skim of this. What conspiracy theorists are saying. The Clark County, Nevada coroner determined Livelsberger 37 died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound, yada yada yada. However, people behind X, formerly Twitter, accounts like @EndWokeness pointed to Livelsberger's military experience as a Green Beret and military bomb expert and wondered online why he would have used amateur explosives. That is a good point. Maybe he couldn't get them. It's New Year's Eve. No one's going to ask too many questions. If this guy pulls up in a Cybertruck and wants to buy a couple $100 worth of fireworks, I don't think too many people are going to bat an eyelid. It wasn't New Year's Eve, but it's New Year's Day. That wouldn't have been out of place. And I think in Nevada, you can buy fireworks. So if there's a fireworks store, they're going to sell fireworks. So maybe that's just a way of avoiding questions. The interesting one that I want to know is, quote, did someone put his corpse in the car? Remember, the car is fully driving, one said. Elon Musk, in hours after the explosion, responded directly to the theory, debunking the notion that Livelsberger could have been killed elsewhere. Musk wrote the Cybertruck's autopilot function would not have worked. It requires a functioning person in the seat. Other posters on X questioned why, if Livelsberger's body was burned beyond recognition, his passport and military ID card survived the blast, and there are questions about why Livelsberger would shoot himself just before he knew the explosion was going to take place. Yeah, also a reasonable question. Why shoot yourself if you're going to blow yourself up? What if the explosion didn't work? Who knows? I mean, he would, I guess, but it's still a question that's worth asking. The entire narrative makes absolutely zero sense to me, the ex-poster wrote on their account. Adam Hoseley, a former journalist and senior television news correspondent, said that based on Livelsberger's experience as a Green Beret, investigators' explanation of the week's explosion does not pass the smell test. Yeah, I tend to agree with him. Others questioned in social media posts why a veteran with Special Forces experience would use a bulletproof and fireproof vehicle to carry out, quote, a mission, and why Livelsberger would repeatedly communicate with his ex-girlfriend about the vehicle he had rented. Yeah, okay. Yeah, why did he contact the ex-girlfriend? Like another article pointed out, I don't think terrorism was the objective, hence why he picked a car that was bulletproof that would cause minimal damage to property around him. Some theorists have focused their speculation on politics, including Livelsberger choosing a hotel owned by Trump. Yeah, yada yada yada. Livelsberger's uncle, Dean Livelsberger, told The Independent he had believed initially that the Cybertruck's battery short-circuited, okay? But when he found out what had caused the explosion, Dean Livelsberger said his nephew would have been able to construct a more sophisticated explosive than what he used. Is Matthew Livelsberger being framed for something? Or did he do this himself to appear dead and disappear? Yeah, I guess we'll never ever know. Conspiracy theories are fun. It is fun to speculate on, what may or may not have happened, but ultimately I guess none of us will ever know. He added, I think of Oklahoma City, Timothy McVeigh was just a normal soldier, not a tier 1 operator like Matt. Yeah, okay. Interesting. Joseph Ushinsky, I think that's how you pronounce his name, University of Miami political science professor who specializes in conspiracy theories, told News Nation his polling shows that on average between 10 to 35% of Americans are conspiracy-minded. I think that's completely understandable. Historically, the only event in which at least 50% of Americans believe a conspiracy was at play was the assassination of JFK in 1963. I think that one's the most obvious conspiracy in history. It was, in my opinion, just done in front of everybody. That's a topic for another day. He says, but when events like this week's take place and garner high doses of media coverage, people begin to consider different opinions. Quote, some humans are inclined towards conspiracy theories. I am. They just see the world through that lens, Unishki said. So when they see the coverage of an event, they think, this thing happened, so it must be a conspiracy, where other people will look at it and say, oh, that was incompetence or accident or God did it or angels or demons. Everyone has their own worldview, and that's what leads them to reach certain conclusions. Conspiracy theories are not limited to large-scale events. For those who consistently look at daily events and conclude that someone or something that they don't like is conspiring against them, Unishki says, an event notably does not matter. Okay, that's interesting. In most cases, conspiracy theories do not have a great deal of detail or evidence to back them up. Unishki said, current societal norms play a role, although social media platforms like X, TikToks give voice to certain theories that don't add to the population of those who believe, the professor said. The shelf life of most conspiracies remains short-lived. The notable exception is the Kennedy assassination, which 51 years after the fact remains debated, with at least half of Americans believing Lee Harvey Oswald did act alone. However, in cases like this week's Cybertruck explosion and deadly attack in New Orleans, the tendency is that prevailing conspiracy theorists will move on when something else happens. Quote, two people exposed to the same exact information will come to very different conclusions about it, simply because of who they are, Unesco told News Nation. That's all that's really going on here. Yeah, it's a very interesting take on how conspiracy theories work. Maybe it is a simple case. Maybe there is something more to it. I guess we'll never know. Is there something more conspiratorial going on, or is it just a Green Beret who suffered a traumatic brain injury and came back from war, not the same person, and who wanted to get his point across by blowing up a Cybertruck outside the Trump Hotel? I don't think any of us will ever know. Yeah, I am conspiratorial minded. I don't believe all conspiracy theories, and I don't think I'm that conspiratorially minded. But something about this doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense, at least to me anyway. And I do tend to believe what Mr. Shoemate was saying on the Sean Ryan show. He also said that this guy had information on the drones over New Jersey and gravity propulsion and a bunch of other weird conspiratorial stuff. So who knows what to fucking believe? What do you believe? Do you think this is a simple cut and dry case, or do you think there's something more behind it? Same goes for the New Orleans attack. Was this guy acting alone, or was he part of a larger cell? Let me know what you think.
Hey everyone, this is Maria with your Creepin' Me Out podcast. If you are into the paranormal, true crime, and just plain weird, you're going to want to listen to our podcast. My friend Jessica and I talk about all things weird and creepy, from the Hat Man to alien abductions to your creepy encounters. And that's where you, the listeners, come in. We are working on making more content for you for what your spooky little hearts desire, which means, you guessed it, we need your stories. You can email them to ycmopod@gmail.com. You can also find a link in our Instagram where you can leave a voice message. You can follow us on Instagram, Threads, and Twitter at ycmopod. Thank you for listening, and stay creepy, my friends.
And with that brings us to the end of the show. I hope you all enjoyed it. A big thank you to everyone who made it to the end. The live communism draws ever closer. March 25th, 2025, Chapter 1 will be released. The merch store should be up and running by the time Episode 1 of Live Communism comes out. I'm also working on a couple of other things I've got in the pipeline, but you'll just have to wait and see what they are. Alright, big thank you to everyone who listened to the end. If you'd like to support the Truth Tank, there's a couple of things you can do. Head on over to the Facebook and Instagram page, give it a follow and a like. You can download and listen to your favourite episodes of the Truth Tank on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Castbox, Pandora, Amazon Music, or wherever else you get podcasts from. Tell your friends, to your family, tell anyone you think might like the show. Help spread the word and get it out there. If you really want to help the show grow, you can leave a 5-star rating and review. I'd be very appreciative. Each review and rating helps the show get found. And I'll be back in the next couple of weeks with a brand new show. But until then, I'm a tank. This is the truth. Truth to tell.